There we go. A very good afternoon. It has just gone midday on Friday, the 10th of January. Happy New Year. I haven't really spoken to you guys since last year, have I? That sounds a bit strange, really, to say that now. It gets to a point. I don't know what the point in the year is that it gets to where you kind of can't really say Happy New Year anymore just because it makes you sound like a prat. I feel like it's getting to that point now. But anyway, one way or another, I do wish anyone I haven't said it to Happy New Year to you. And thank you very much indeed for tuning into the Midday show. No Russ Kane today. He's off being busy elsewhere. So he will return on Monday with Longy. But that's all good. But in the meantime, I'm afraid you'll have to tolerate me and a couple of others of our regular friends. Hopefully we'll be enough company for you. And very much look forward to entertaining you for the next hour and joining in with all of the discussions that you want to do, which you are most welcome to do so. Any odd way. I hear your cries. What are you going to talk about today? Well, I'm pleased you asked me that because it's Friday, as you know, and once every other Friday or so, our very capable and intrepid theatre critic, Jonathan Baz, joins us to tell us about what is treading the boards at the moment. And I'm delighted to say that he will do that in just a moment's time. Then a little later on, the effervescent Chantal Rickards, OBE, will be here to tell us about some of the stuff on the box. So that's all exciting, and that's absolutely all coming up. But very, very quickly, got to give you a bit of a rundown in my world. Flipping heck. If you have noticed that there's been quite a few occasions when I have missed the show of late, I do apologize for that. The truth is that work is a bit bonkers at the moment. I mean, I know I'm bonkers, but work is properly bonkers. And what's happened is that I am in the process of working on a pretty big project. Now, this makes me sound very grandiose, so it makes me sound a little bit up my own backside, and I can only apologize. I don't mean to sound like that, but it is genuinely true. And I can hand on heart say that when I was told towards the end of last year that I was moving Monday to Friday and have a bit more normality when it came to hours that I was working, that it might just be that I get a bit of my life back. Wrong. I'm afraid absolutely not. It means that, if anything, I am being pulled from more sides than I've ever been pulled before, so I can only humbly apologize. But it's very nice to be back here today, and a great honor, as ever, to be standing in for Mr. Russ Kane. Right, without further ado, let's talk theatre, shall we? He's waiting patiently in the wings, as they say. Mr. Jonathan Baz, a very good afternoon to you, and Happy New Year, sir.
Good afternoon, Phil, and Happy New Year to you too. And yes, waiting in the wings. What a lead in.
It's a little nod. It's a little nod to what you do. So I figured it was appropriate.
I see what you did there.
Now, I have to tell you, right, I'm very pleased. I've just realized you must have a blurred background, because I genuinely thought, I haven't had a drink today. What the hell's going on? But no, that's what it is. It's a blurred background. It's good news. I'm all right, everyone. Don't panic. Anyway, so.
Yes, lucky you. You've got a blurred background. I've got a blurred foreground. I was quaffing too much champagne at an opening party last night.
Excellent.
So, yes, there's a lot of blurred vision.
Excellent. Well, I have no problem with that whatsoever, because at least that's a justified excuse. With me, it's just not concentrating, and that's less good. Now, I have to say that it's 10 days into the new year. Has there really been that much opportunity to go and see much theatre of late, or is this stuff that maybe falls over from the end of last year as well?
Interesting. It's a little bit of new stuff that's open this week. A little bit of handover stuff that I caught up with towards the end of last year. But I have to say, my diary gets busier and busier as the weeks roll out into the future. Indeed.
I know that feeling, but sadly, it's not with theatre stuff.
So. Anyway, shortly before Christmas, I went to see a show that opened in the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith and is still there for at least it's there for another week before it goes on tour. The show is called Here You Come Again, and the clue, as you may gather, is in the title, because
perhaps
it's a jukebox musical around the songs of Dolly Parton.
Yes, there we go.
And I need to say this really carefully, because it showcases Dolly's biggest hits, and you really don't want to say that after too many champagnes.
Very naughty, Jonathan Baz, but yes, probably is. It's good to make sure that you are moderated on that.
And I have to say, it is an evening of absolute theatrical delight.
Now that's good to hear that, because I actually think that the Riverside Studios, if I'm not very much mistaken, I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, was Riverside Studios where it was the sort of stage adaptation of Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris was on.
Yes, that was there
Flowers
possibly
for
last
Mrs.
year.
Harris, I think it was called.
Yes,
Something like
yes, Flowers for Mrs. Harris. That was last year.
Yeah. And
go
it
on.
was, I actually quite like that. It was a nice little space to go and watch theatre in.
Yep. I mean, the Riverside Studios has been
There's
a
several
nice.
of them, aren't there? I think.
Well, there's a couple of spaces that, it is of course the converted. I couldn't tell you what TV company owned the space originally, but much like the Troubadour in Wembley Park, it's one of these massive barns of a room that used to be a TV studio.
Now, Troubadour, I can tell you, that used to be Fountain Television Studios. Right. I know that much, but I don't know what was in Hammersmith. So.
And now it's been, converted for some number of years into a relatively versatile auditorium with, nicely racked seating so that most people get a good view. And it's a pleasant venue. Some of its stuff, like any venue, some of its stuff is brilliant. Some of it a little bit less so. I mean, Flowers for Mrs. Harris was fantastic. Eddie Izzard's Hamlet last year, less so. However,
I mean, needless to say,
Here You Come Again.
Was he Hamlet or Janlet? But yes,
well, quite. I see what you did there as well.
Thanks, I tried. It sounded good in my head. I'm really sorry. But anyway.
Here You Come Again. It's a jukebox musical put together by three Americans with additional material by an English chap called Jonathan Harvey, who is a very talented writer.
I know Jonathan Harvey because didn't he wrote, I think, Gimme, Gimme, Gimme?
Quite possibly, yes. Yep.
And I also think he's done stuff for Corrie as well. He's very clever.
He's a very, very clever man. And he has taken this story and added in terms of dramatic heft, a lot of weight to it. The story is really simple. It's set in a northern English town at the time of the pandemic. We meet Kevin, who's played by a very talented chap called Stephen Webb, who is a 40-year-old gay bloke recently dumped by his boyfriend, had to come back to his parents' house to live because he's skint. So he's living in his parents' house, back in the bedroom that he lived in as a teenager when he was a fan devotee of Dolly Parton. That devotedness has not left him. So he's in his bedroom surrounded by posters and memorabilia of Dolly Parton, feeling thoroughly depressed because his boyfriend has dumped him, etc., etc. And then, lo and behold, a few minutes into the show, boof, a flash of pyrotechnics, and Dolly Parton comes out of one of the posters singing Here You Come Again. The actress who plays Dolly is an American woman, Trisha Paoluccio, who I'd not heard of beforehand, who outside of her wigs and makeup...
Sounds very American.
outside of wigs and makeup and costume, does not look a bit like Dolly Parton.
Oh, no, you can't tell me that. I'm disappointed. I thought you were going to say she's spot on.
However, on stage, with the wiggery and the costuming, the makeup, her style and her voice, she is just terrific is an understatement. It was absolute gorgeous pleasure. The only way, if you like the songs of Dolly Parton, that is quite a strong
I'd imagine that. I was going to say, I'd imagine that would have to be quite the prerequisite.
Yes, that is a prerequisite. I would say the audience was as a straight bloke in the audience. I was in the minority, a lot of women, and a wonderfully camp audience as well. And the show finishes off with a fun old sing along as well.
Can I guess? Is there any chance of a bit of 9 to 5?
Possibly. Yeah. Possibly. And a little bit of I Will Always Love You. It was
nice.
It was lovely.
Yes, which of course a lot of people actually forget Dolly Parton did do the original of that. Everyone thinks Whitney Houston.
She wrote it.
Yeah,
Whitney of course smashed it into mega heights. Dolly interestingly did not write Here You Come Again, but don't ask me who did because I haven't got that to hand on a screen. But it really is. It expectations exceeded. a glorious night of really unpretentious, good, fun entertainment, and also at a very, very attractive price. You're not paying West End prices out in Hammersmith. You're paying far less, and it's on there for another week. Then it's touring for 5 or 6 weeks or so, and it's just good fun. Lovely little
What would you
band,
say
lovely
in
set.
terms of the set and stuff like that? Because the one thing I found with Flowers for Mrs. Harris is at the first glance, I thought, oh, they've put no effort into this set whatsoever, and then suddenly it came alive. But would you say that they've made more of an effort with this, or is this more about the
No,
performance?
I would say the set is imaginative. It needs to be, because some of the illusions and the pyrotechnics and Dolly popping up and whatever requires a little bit of cleverness in the set to make the magic happen. It's not the most glamorous of sets. So the set is good, but don't sit there and go wow, because the set is effectively a northern town, the attic of a northern town. They use the space well. There are times when members of the band pop up even above the stage, and here, there, and everywhere. So the spacing is done well. It's not stunning, but interestingly, sometimes sets and visuals. Did you see Hello Dolly at the Palladium? Because I've said
I
this
certainly
before.
did. I loved it.
Yeah, but I found the scenery and the staging of that to be underwhelming for a 5-star performance from Imelda Staunton. It was all conveyor belts and projections, apart from the Harmonia Gardens scene. And a little bit
look,
of
I don't get me wrong. I hear that, and I agree that there was an awful lot of, as you say, the video walls or projection versus a not conveyor belt, what do they call it, like a treadmill type thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, I absolutely loved that production. I just thought it was superb. So even though I agree that for the Palladium they could have done a bit better with the set, it was still terrific.
For example, the Panto at the Palladium, the set is just gorgeous. They've, the tickets are not cheap, but they've thrown a fortune at the production.
Well, most of that budget seems to go on Julian Clary's costumes. But yes.
Well, and something, good job too. Costumes are fantastic. Various people fly in and out. So they've spent a fortune, and it shows. And in that respect, yes, because you talk about scenery. Sometimes it's stunning, sometimes it's not. I would say you go and see Here You Come Again, not for the scenery. The scenery's fun. It does tell you that you're in a bloke's shabby attic covered in Dolly Parton memorabilia. But it's the acting that makes it work, because Stephen Webb, who plays this chappy Kevin, really, you believe in him. I found myself more moved by the story than I was expecting to be, more as sort of Dolly Parton as this angel of redemption and self-belief. She comes along preaching a very strong Dolly message of what is good about believing in yourself, etc., and look for the positive in life. So it is as cheesy as heck. Absolutely as cheesy as heck. Let's not kid ourselves. And I was quite surprised. The Times gave it a 2-star review, saying there was not much dramatic, intelligence in it. And I thought,
but hang on a sec. Do any of these jukebox things really have that much drama in it? They're not supposed to, are they?
Well, they're meant to have a story that works, that is a framework on which the songs can be hung. Look at Mamma Mia. A very nicely simplistic story that was itself based around a film, the title of which, excuse me, completely escapes me.
I didn't even know that. So that's news to me anyway.
It's worth a Google. There is a gorgeous romantic film about a woman who finds herself in a romantic quest of trying to discern who is the father of her child, having had liaisons with a number of people in a short period of time. So you look at the story of Mamma Mia. It's a clever little story. But it's not rocket science. It's just a little bit of humanity. But it's a framework around which these songs can be hung. And as I say, Here You Come Again, it just works. If you like Dolly Parton, go and see it. You will not stop smiling. Maybe shed the odd tear briefly from start until finish.
Excellent. And by the way, if you saw me rubbing my eye just now, I'm not getting emotional. I have allergies once in a while. That means my eye doesn't stop running. So I do apologize. I'm finding it it's a lovely experience to be back on air with you, Jonathan, but I'm not getting emotional about it, just to clarify. But anyway, but what?
Very disappointed to hear that. I thought
that's Here You Come Again by the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. So what else have we?
What else?
What's
another opener this week has been the return to the West End of Tracy Ann Oberman's take on The Merchant of Venice.
Now, I saw that advertised the other day. I do want to go and see that.
Have you not seen it yet?
No, I'm ashamed.
Okay,
I want to see it. I want to see it though.
Fair enough. Well, it was good when it came along 2 years ago. Opened in Watford in February 2023. Then went on tour, and now it's back in the West End for a month or so, and then again a tour for I think 4 or 5 or 6 weeks to various theatres.
Now, if you don't mind my observing, you said it was good. Does that mean it's not so good now?
No, it's better.
Oh,
actually, it achieves new depths. Noting, of course, your pins that you are proudly sporting.
Well, yes,
as you do.
I'm sad I have to, but yes. So.
Her production, as you probably know or may not know, took and still takes Shakespeare's story. She and the director, talented woman called Bridget Larmore, took Shakespeare's brilliant original and adapted it with a little bit of fine tweaking here or there, notably making Shylock a woman, a la Tracy Ann Oberman, and placing the anti-Semitism center stage. Because in the original comedy, and never forget that Merchant of Venice is one of Shakespeare's comedies, hard to believe, in the original story, of course, Shylock is out of it in the Act 4 out of Act 5, because it's all about how can the money be raised so that Bassanio can and woo the beautiful Portia in her beautiful Belmont. And to be honest, whenever I think of Belmont, I think somewhere in between Cannons Park and Harrow. But of course, in this instance,
exactly,
Belmont is of course this gorgeous town somewhere.
As long as you think of Belmont and not Belmarsh, that's fine.
Right? Oh, yes, or Belmont Circle. But this Belmont is it's a bucolic palace, some few miles away from Venice, where the fair Portia lives. And what Tracy Ann Oberman did was take the citizens of Venice, Portia, etc., transport them into 1936 as the fascist classes of England. The Portia character, for example, is given very much a Nancy Mitford hue in how she's portrayed, and Shylock, as the old Jewish moneylender, is the victim of the anti-Semitism that's expressed towards him by the fascist citizens of London, and it's what makes the show. I described it as almost sort of probably essential viewing now, is that Tracy opened her show 2 years ago, February 2023. And it was a very good historical look at what happened in 1936 in London when there were fascists and anti-Semitism on the streets of London. Then, you know where this conversation's going, Phil. October 2023 happened, and you had the horrors themselves of the 7th of October and what happened on that day with the ghastly terrorist activities. And then, shockingly, around the world and on the streets of London every week, you were then seeing the most horrendous displays, frankly, of anti-Semitism.
And let's be honest, just because it's not covered in the news, we continue to do so, by the way.
Indeed.
It's not gone away. It just so happens the news has thankfully got a bit bored of it now.
So going back to revisit this play, and in fact, Tracy and her director have because they had adapted it, so they chopped it around a little bit first time around. This time around, they've tidied up bits of the final act, put a bit more in there as Bassanio marries Portia, etc., and all of the lovey-dovey bits of the story. But the fascism that Shylock is experiencing in 1930s London now has the most ghastly, ghastly echoes of what we are seeing on our streets and on other streets around the world in a reality that didn't exist when they were dreaming up this adaptation. And in fact, it's something I'll be writing about for publication in a week or so's time about
Well, I
how
wanted to ask you about that because I believe that you have been writing about this, haven't you? Can you tell us anything about what you've been writing about how anti-Semitism is plaguing the theatrical world?
Well, yes. So on a more general level, it occurred to me 2 or 3 months ago. You've got a play called Giant with John Lithgow playing Roald Dahl, a play that is all about Roald Dahl back, gosh, I believe in the 80s, who published a review of a book in which a book about Israel and Roald Dahl and the war in Lebanon, and Roald Dahl's comments were really quite vitriolic and hateful. And the anti-Semitism was dripping from his words. And the play Giant is about how his literary agent, Tom Maschler, who was a real person in real life, together with a fictitious literary agent from New York, a fictitious literary agent from New York, who comes over to beseech Roald Dahl from the New York publishing angle. And she, in turn, both Tom Maschler and this fictitious agent are both Jewish. And there is a little bit of a challenge posed towards the comments that Dahl has been making. But the play itself, in my opinion, brilliantly performed. Let me be quite clear. John Lithgow deserves whatever Olivier's are being handed out for acting this year because his work is exquisite. Only way to describe it. The content, however, I found disappointing. But nonetheless, you've got a play there that's all about a man and his anti-Semitism. You've got Tracy Ann Oberman's Merchant of Venice, which takes Shakespeare's story and writes it, putting the anti-Semitism center stage. Down the road, you've got Cabaret, now going into its 4th year at what was the Playhouse Theatre, now rebranded the Kit Kat Club after the location in Berlin where Cabaret plays out. In which the terrible fate that is to befall Berlin's Jews and Germany's Jews almost provides the mood music, as it were, to the collapse of the Weimar Republic. I don't know if you've seen Cabaret the musical, Phil.
I confess that I actually haven't, and the reason why is because that I've had very mixed reviews. Now, it's very silly of me because normally I say, well, it's up to me to make up my own mind. But I've just heard one or two too many people say that they weren't as impressed with it as I was hoping they would be, and that's just put me off slightly. But I don't know what you think. I do want to
personally. I mean, I've got one particular niggle with an aspect of the casting of the production, but I'm not going to go up that path because we've only got a few minutes left, and it really would open a Pandora's box of discussions. So let me ignore that slight reservation and actually say it is a brilliant production.
Okay.
It doesn't pull any punches as regards the anti-Semitism that was going on in Germany at the time, in a way, for example, that the movie, which I'm sure you will have seen, the Liza Minnelli, maybe a
long time ago, but
right.
Yes.
Okay, so the movie actually didn't airbrush
I like
out
the
a lot
bowler
of
hats, but yeah.
quite well. That's the choreography. It's dark. It's bleak. It does show the misery of what the collapse of the Weimar Republic was all about, and but it does so in a very, very stylized format. The cabaret scene, the cabaret location, is incredibly decadent. It's full of the sleaze and the sexuality that you'd associate with what's the amoral Berlin of the Weimar years was all about. And the songs, of course, by Kander and Ebb, some of them are bangers. You've got Cabaret, and interestingly, in this production, it's fair to say, when you think of the song Cabaret, "Come to the Cabaret, my friend," and old chum, with Liza Minnelli singing it out and doing the bowler hat routine, etc. This production upends that, And in this
Interesting.
production, the Sally Bowles character takes the title song Cabaret and really makes it quite mournful and quite chilling for her own personal journey, because she goes through a fairly horrendous set of experiences through the story, and Sally Bowles does not have a happy ending. And Cabaret, the way it's sung in this production, it really opened my eye. And gosh, we're talking 3 years ago since I reviewed it. Go and see it.
I absolutely promise I will get around to it. I mean, obviously, we started off this particular discussion talking about Tracy Ann Oberman's Merchant of Venice, 1936.
You've only got a month to see that one.
Right, which I will get round to as well, which that's on at Trafalgar Theatre, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, really quick question. Just before, have you got anything else up your sleeve that you want to tell us about?
No, that's my sleeve.
Fine. Okay, because then in that case, it gives us a chance to discuss this. You mentioned quite rightly about sort of the always the way I'm highlighting what's going on in the Middle East at the moment and the sort of the backlash that Jewish people are facing as a result of it. Do you think that the way that anti-Semitism, in inverted commas, has infiltrated the theatrical world is more highlighting awareness, or is it more justifying what is going on, would you say? How do you interpret it?
Well, I mean, that's a very, very interesting question. Is it highlighting awareness? Some people will say yes. I spoke to a number of people as I published my paper earlier this week, who were saying people are queuing up to understand what this anti-Semitism is all about. Though my concluding point was Shakespeare right all along? Because Shylock, as we know, is ultimately he's a bit part, even though it's a big role. He's a bit player in The Merchant of Venice, who's written out before the final act, and he's really treated incredibly. He loses his family, he loses his fortune, and he loses his faith. He is stripped of everything, and this is a comedy, and this is entertainment. And I reckon that Shakespeare thought that the groundlings would really enjoy seeing the old Jewish person treated so horrendously, and would probably have had a good old laugh at him before they go into the final act and the lovely wedding scene and the love scene, and they all live happily ever after. So I think Shakespeare was onto something when he thought there was a damn good entertainment value in seeing Jews being given a hard time. I do pose that rather as a question rather than as a statement. But when you look at the play,
well, of course, the question is, do be or not to be?
Anyway, great. Oh, yeah. Boom, boom. Right. But one way or another, it's certainly pulling the audiences in. Okay, Giant is about Roald Dahl. It's got John Lithgow, so there's a lot of star attraction in there. Tracy Ann Oberman is leading in The Merchant of Venice. So again, you've got star attraction there of people who recognize her from a multi-television roles. So there is a bit of that, but I do believe there is quite a, and as someone else mentioned to me earlier this week, look at Fiddler on the Roof. Which of course has beautiful songs, etc., and written by a great Jewish partnership. But ultimately, the Act 1 closer is a pogrom, and Act 2's closer is dispersal. So it's pretty bleak. And if you think of the final number of Fiddler on the Roof, you don't come out of it clapping your hands and having a laugh like you do when you leave the producers or Hello Dolly. You come out of Fiddler on the Roof depressed because they've all been dispersed from Anatevka. So it really it's made for good box office. Jewish suffering has made for good box office for a long, long time.
But wouldn't you say that the Jewish community gets the last laugh if those producers are the ones who ultimately put on those productions and then make the money back off the misery?
What, are you saying that all producers are Jewish?
No, not all producers. I'm saying the ones who put on productions who are of Jewish partnership.
Well, anyone who's Jewish who profits from it, or who has their wages paid through being in the show. Yes,
exactly.
But
so there you go. They have the last laugh potentially.
Yeah, but Cameron McIntosh, last time I checked, was not Jewish, nor the producers, nor the owners of the Regent's Park Theatre. And I have to say, also, one of the producers of Tracy Ann's Merchant of Venice is a lovely woman. They're not all Jewish people who are, even though Monty Python did sing, "You won't succeed on Broadway if you don't have any Jews." There are a few.
I think you misunderstand. What I'm trying to say is that maybe there is some silver lining in some of the cloud there. But anyway, Jonathan, I'm really sorry. We'll have to end it there for no other reason than the glorious Chantal Rickards is also waiting now in the wings. However, I also want to read a couple of messages that crept in as well. So I shall say on that note that it's a treat to be back with you, and hopefully we'll speak again very soon.
Indeed. Likewise.
Farewell, Jonathan. Bye-bye. There we go. Right now, we'll come back to to Chantal Rickards, who's there in just a moment's time, but just wanted to read some of the messages. I neglected right at the start of this to say hello to Robert Van Buren, who said, "Hello, Phil." Well, Robert, that's very kind of you. Hello, indeed. Kimmy Lashmar has said, "Hello, Happy New Year. When do we actually stop saying that?" And that was the question I raised before. I have absolutely no idea. Karen Shortland, off the back of our discussion I was having just now with Jonathan, was talking about the Troubadour Theatre over in Wembley, which used to be the Fountain Television Studios. Karen says, "I remember going to Fountain Studios years ago for a few different TV show recordings. Looking forward, though, to going to the Troubadour on Sunday to see Starlight Express." Karen, I have to tell you, I don't think you'll be disappointed unless you have a particular fondness for the original Starlight Express, in which case, go in with an open mind, because I would say it is not a patch on the original, but it is a very good production. That's the best way I could summarize it. Asa Don Brown. He says, "Good day, Phil and Jonathan." Well, Jonathan's still in the wings, so he can say, there you go. Hang on a sec. Jonathan, he says, "Good day to you." There you go. Right, there you go. So he's waving back. And Liz Saul says, "Hello, boys." Kimmy Lashmar again says, "And yet we can't upset Pakistanis who groom kids." That is off the back of what we were talking about with the anti-Semitism in the West End, and also in particular with speaking out, should we say, against some of the scenes that we have seen since the 7th of October 2023. Well, Kimmy, I don't want to go too much down this particular rabbit hole, but I would actually argue that that's not strictly speaking true. And I think where the problem is, there's an awful lot of people who hide heinous acts behind religion because they know most people are too scared to speak up, or indeed nationality. Of course, I know Pakistani is obviously a nationality as opposed to religion, you understand. But the point is that I would argue that there are plenty of people who try and use that as a weapon so that they can't be questioned over their activities. But I put it to you like this. I would say that if there is something culturally inherent that means that someone has committed a crime because it is, in inverted commas, acceptable where they come from, then that makes it relevant. And therefore, we shouldn't be worried about whether or not it offends somebody for saying it's because of where you come from that you're doing this, and therefore we find it abhorrent. I don't think we should be worried about that, because the bottom line is it's the law of this land. And if you're lucky enough to live in this country, you must adhere to the laws, and no one should be above the laws. It doesn't matter what your nationality is, it doesn't matter what your religion is. It certainly doesn't matter what your political status is either. That's all I'd say on that. And then Chantal. Oh, Chantal, what was that off? I never share my popcorn. What was that off the back of? We'll speak to you in just a second and find out. Graham Pack has said, "Oliver has transferred from Chichester to the West End with the portrayal of Fagin." I imagine that's with the portrayal of Fagin. Absolutely, yeah. Oliver Twist definitely went through my mind as well. Dickens has not exactly been flattering towards Jewish people in the past. And Graham says, "Can I be the first to wish you happy Easter?" Well, I can confirm, Graham, you are definitely the first to wish me happy Easter. And Hug Sameach Passover to you as well. And Julie Voice says, "Hello, Phil and Chantal." Well, that's wasted unless I say, "Hello, Chantal Rickards."
Well, hello, and hello, Julie, too.
Very happy New Year to you, Chantal. And I've spoken to you since.
Yes, and I'd like the second to wish you a happy Easter.
I can confirm you are the second to wish me a happy Easter, at least this year anyway. So, and might I say back at you in the hope I do actually get to speak to you before Easter. But anyway.
Somebody sent me on Facebook this morning a photograph, I think it was from Tesco, of Easter eggs already in the store.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
I know. I was pretty cross about that.
What, cross buns or what? Sorry. Anyway, sorry, I'm on fire today. And actually, as you know, that's terrible. Do you know what? I shouldn't have said that because I was genuinely, the first thing I was going to talk to you about was what's going on in LA. So I do apologize for the ghastly link there. So please excuse me. That was not my intention. No. However, it would be remiss for us not to mention what is going on over in California, given your association with that part of the world.
And indeed, if you've looked at my Facebook in the last couple of days, you will see that I've been responding to lots and lots of different people who have told me about what's going on out there. And it's horrendous. It's Armageddon is how they're describing it.
It looks like the irony, it looks like something out of a film, but it's just sadly, it's very, very real.
Extraordinary. One particular video somebody sent me had been shot by a cameraman who was just driving up the PCH, which is the Pacific Coast Highway. So as you drive north from Los Angeles, you come out of Santa Monica and you have the hills on the right and you have the sea on the left. And then you drive north towards Malibu and beyond. But this is a sort of 2 or 3 minute film of a guy in a car where everything is burning. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. It's incredibly well shot, which is why it's so impactful. And there's no sound, there's no voiceover, but it's so dramatic and so distressing.
But it really is absolutely unbelievable. I've seen some of these videos that you speak about, and there are people who've actually filmed driving down Sunset Boulevard, and it's just ablaze, the whole blooming lot.
Yeah. So the bit of Sunset that we all know is the bit that's up in West Hollywood. That's fine. But Sunset goes basically all the way to the coast, which is about 6 miles to the west from the Hollywood bit. And that's been devastated. So it's just the whole thing.
And what's that area? It begins with an A or something, I think, doesn't it?
Oh, no, Altadena's out towards the east. The Palisades are on the west.
Palisades, sorry, not the A. Palisades, sorry, is what I was saying.
Palisades are very, very shishi. My first thought when I heard that the Palisades were burning were for a very close friend called Joe Ravitch, who has an extraordinary home in the Palisades, but also for Anthony Hopkins, because I knew he lived in the Palisades, because I bumped into him once in the Palisades in Starbucks. So that's where and I think his house is gone, Anthony Hopkins.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, lots of people have lost homes, and a lot of people will now be out of work. It affects so many people in so many ways. But
I saw that on the news, they estimate already the damage could be anything up to $150 billion.
Yeah. The air quality is terrible. And I've just been saying to all of my friends, I've been on the phone, most of the night talking to people. Just everybody is saying stay indoors, which I'm just sort of repeating to everybody else, especially those who've got, any form of lung disorder. Just don't leave the house. It's really been dramatic, and it will take an awfully long time to get back. Part of the problem is that the houses are built of wood. Everything's built of wood.
Yeah.
They're low and wide.
That is quite traditional for America, sadly. That is the problem.
It is very traditional for America. Obviously, most of them aren't 2-story. So when they go very quickly because they just spread right and left really fast. People on the West Coast traditionally didn't build 2-story houses because heat rises. And so they didn't want, in the old days, 2-story houses because they didn't want hotter rooms on the second floor, so they only built bungalows in effect. It's slightly different on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, most of the homes are single-story homes.
I do find it absolutely fascinating the way that America has never seemed to learn from past disasters. I have a lot of love for America. I think it's by and large a great country, and I know obviously it's a conglomerate of several smaller countries, but you know what I mean. But as a whole land, I think by and large is amazing. But I find it absolutely fascinating the way they never ever learn from years gone by. One thing that you have got to hand to this country, that even though most things that we do here are an absolute disaster, the truth is that when the Great Fire of London happened and all of the wooden properties burnt down, we learned very quickly that we shouldn't be building with wood. And that is one of the major reasons why modern building regulations state that things are built out of brick, is because of most of what happened with the fire of London.
Yeah.
And yet the fact that America has never learnt from this, I find absolutely staggering. And I really hope beyond hope that when they rebuild California and Hollywood, that they will look to use different materials.
Yeah. But also part of the reason that they haven't built traditionally in brick is because of the San Andreas fault, because they're so worried that actually if the buildings collapse, then that is an awful lot of concrete and brick that is going to fall on people, as opposed to a wooden building, which might not be as vulnerable. I mean, it's an absolute unmitigated mess. And, you know, a very close friend of mine lost her house yesterday, and I'm sure I'm going to hear more of that over the next 2 or 3 days. Dreadful, absolutely dreadful.
Oh, right. Well, can we try and move on to hopefully stuff that will cheer us up a little bit? Can I just say, actually, there's 1 or 2 messages that come in. Asa Don Brown, Dr. Asa Don Brown, as he's got on YouTube, says, "Good day, Chantal." He said hello to me before, so that's why he's not being rude. Kimmy Lashmar says, "That devastation will look horrific for years." I agree. To be honest with you, I think it will look like a war zone for at least the next decade.
Yeah.
Graham Pax, mind you, having said that, though, if they build with conventional American building techniques, the truth is they can put up construction very quickly over there.
Very quickly.
So it is possible. You know, I mean, it's not actually unheard of for really new homes to be knocked out in a week. It's bizarre. Yeah. Graham Pax says the houses in the Palisades are very close to each other and the houses are timber framed, which makes them more susceptible to burning down. Well, the main reason why it was so susceptible to burning down is because of the strong winds. You know, I believe that Chantal, you must have happened across Caroline Faraday before, or at least know of her.
Indeed.
And Caroline was, when I was messaging her, because she's one of the first people I thought of when I saw all that, I thought, oh my God, I've got to make sure she's okay. And I'm sure she must have had 100 messages from everyone in the UK who knows her. And she's been doing the rounds. She's been on Sky News, BBC, and doing all sorts of things recently. So thank God she is okay.
Yeah.
But I messaged her straight away. And one of the things that she sent me straight back was a video that she had sent me of the high winds they're experiencing. And this is why it's so out of control, is that it's less so about the fact the wildfire is spreading so rapidly. It's the winds that's making it happen. And she sent me a photo of the wind without any fire associated with it. But she said, look, this is what I'm living with. And it's scaring me because I think, you know, if this wind is going to carry on, the flames will very quickly spread over.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
no, well, the Santa Ana winds are well known in the winter. Clearly, it's not very cold at the moment. It's about 75 degrees in old money, or in American money, it's 75 degrees because they still do old money.
Yeah, so Fahrenheit.
Yeah, but it's 100.
Which is around 20, by the way, is around the early 20s to those who speak the new money, by the way. But yeah.
Yeah. No, winds about 100 miles an hour. And I mean, I just can't even begin to think what awfulness everybody is going through. But one thing, Phil, is it's not just somebody throwing a cigarette out of the windows. Some of these fires have been set deliberately, and they have already arrested somebody. And
so that's what I want to make very clear about this as well, is because I get pretty cross when people use the term wildfires. Yeah. What they do is they give this ghastly impression. They actually, it's quite disgusting. What they do is they jump on this bandwagon of blaming Mother Nature, and in turn coming out with the excuse, oh, it's climate change. Look how devastating the world is. No, it's a vicious criminal act that has gone horribly, horribly wrong. And that, I'm afraid, is what this boils down to, a lot of it. Now, I don't deny that maybe that some of the weather is not helping matters, but it absolutely is not, because the sun was burning so brightly that a fire started in some dry wasteland. This is not what this is about.
Well, it can be. I would doubt that every fire has been set deliberately, because that would be really quite extraordinary for somebody to set 20 different fires over 2 days.
No, as I say, the wind has definitely not helped matters, but I don't want people to just think, my goodness me, the world's going to hell in a handcart because of climate change. It is not just that. Anyway, let's move on to something far more cheerful, shall we? And what have you happened across, Chantal?
Cheerful and possibly not a cheerful topic, but actually an incredibly good film that everybody now needs to go out and see. And I can't remember whether I took you to see it or whether I took Russ to see it, but it's a very, very good film by Jesse Eisenberg called A Real Pain. I don't know if you've read about it. And it's about a mismatched couple of cousins from New York.
No, I don't think it was. Maybe that was one for us. I don't recall.
current day, and these mismatched cousins who haven't seen each other for a while, and I won't tell you why, because that's sort of part of the story.
Actually, I tell you what, I can remember the three that we went to go and see recently very quickly, because it was the one about the reimagination of World War II, what happened during the Blitz.
Oh, the Blitz, called Blitz.
Yeah. It was The Room Next Door.
Oh, yes, that was weird. Yeah.
It was very strange. And it was The Apprentice.
Oh, okay, right.
So,
well, we didn't see this. Anyway, this is really worth seeing. It features Jesse Eisenberg in a role, an on-screen role. He is also the writer and director, and Kieran Culkin, who
Macaulay Culkin's brother
from Succession. He was Roman Roy in Succession, and that was his sort of big breakout role. And the two of them are cousins. The Kieran Culkin character is sort of loose, hippie kid, free spirit. And Jesse Eisenberg is very locked down. He's a dad. He's incredibly serious. And they come together for a trip to Poland to honor their grandmother, who had been a Holocaust survivor. And actually, you don't really need to know more than that, other than that it is beautifully written. It is a road movie. It's a buddy movie. They fall in with a group of travelers all together, where the tour guide is an English actor called Will Sharp, who's extremely good and rather downplayed, and actually plays the role beautifully. And this sort of weird gang of people on a little bus, people carrier thing, go round Poland together, going to all the different sites. But it's incredibly well done. It's really a story. It's a beautiful homage to the grandparental generation of, who were the Holocaust generation. And it's really a story about how the story now relates to the grandchildren of those people, and what their understanding is of the horrors that had happened before. But it's also just about people, and about how people come together, and about people's relationships and the difficulties behind the mask that people experience. I can't recommend it enough. Kieran Culkin won Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes at the weekend, and absolutely rightly so. And I think could possibly win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars as well in a few weeks' time. So
remind us the name of the film is
called A Real Pain, and I think it starts in cinemas. I think it's this week. If not, it's next week. But I'm almost sure it's in cinema from this weekend. Anyway, it's lovely. It's really worth going to see. It's not very long, but it's delightfully well made. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for that. What else have you happened across?
Something actually very cheery, and I have to give a big shout out to Graham Pack, who is one of our regular listeners and also contributes so well with lots of witticisms that he sends in.
Noticed, yes.
Well,
the difference is he tends to get the laughs. I don't, which is irritating. So,
he's funnier than you.
It's been said on many an occasion. It's fine. I do know these things. It's all right.
Well, he pointed out an 8-part Australian comedy series that I had literally never heard of, and I thought, okay, if this has been recommended by Graham, I'm definitely going to have a look at it, because I think he quite knows what I like. So anyway, he sent me this.
That's not in the least bit creepy, but okay.
Well, no, because I think if you do listen each week, you get an idea of the things that I think are good fun and worth watching. And actually, he's absolutely right on this. It's an Australian comedy called Wellmania, which is a horrible name. Doesn't really mean anything at all. But a very, very good lead actress called Celeste Barber, who is she's a comedienne, and I'd never heard of her before, really. But she plays the role of a young woman in New York, or sort of late 30s, early 40s, late 30s maybe, who lives in New York. She's Australian, and she is a food writer. And she gets offered a major break on television. But before she can take up this major break on television, she flies to Sydney for the weekend to surprise her best friend at her birthday party. And very briefly, her handbag gets stolen, her green card, her American green card inside it is stolen inside the handbag, and she then has to have a checkup, as it were, with the American authorities in Sydney to try and retrieve her green card to get back to the life she knows. But
she's adding this to the watch list on Netflix. So
indeed. But basically, she gets stuck for crazy reasons. She gets stuck in Australia. She cannot go back to America. So she tries to speed up the process of getting back by getting super fit and healthy and trying out all of these mad, crazy diets and fads and everything she can possibly do to get well and to get healthy again. Anyway, I've watched the first 2 episodes. There are some laugh out loud lines. She's a great physical actress. She does all her own stunts in the program, and it's genuinely funny. She's an incredibly good writer, and I think it's really worth watching. Sadly, there are only 8 episodes, and it hasn't been recommissioned for a second series. God only knows why. Maybe it falls off a cliff by episode 3 or episode 4, but I somehow don't think it. But who knows? Certainly the first 2 episodes are really good and definitely worth watching, and I want to watch more, and that's really it's as much as I can say. If I want to carry on watching more, and that's quite a rarity for me in television, then it's good. I mean, it's definitely worth a watch, and it's, you know, a nice joyful piece from Sydney in the middle of our winter. They're having the sunshine, we're not, but we can appreciate it through some of the...
Yeah, we're quite used to seeing that, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
Someone else having the summer and we're not.
I know.
Although I do have to say, though, that it is amazing the number of these series that actually go down quite well, and yet they're never actually recommissioned. Because I recall that there was this brilliant series on the BBC, and I don't say that very often, called Dickensian. And it was actually quite a few years ago now, but it is still available on iPlayer. Yeah. And it's basically the workings of Charles Dickens, the big workings of Charles Dickens, from everything from Christmas Carol to Oliver Twist to what is it? Oh, if we're going to say, what's the one with
Great Expectations?
I think it might be Great Expectations. What's the one with? I think it is actually Great Expectations, where you've got because Amelia Havisham. Yeah, I think it's Great Expectations.
Yes, Havisham. Yeah.
Yeah. So but all of these different characters all come together under one drama. That's why it's called Dickensian, and it's all inspired by the works of Charles Dickens.
Really?
And it's absolutely fantastic the way that it actually sort of happens. Silly things like, for example, we never really learn how Jacob Marley dies in A Christmas Carol. We just know that he is dead. You know, the opening line being Marley was dead. There's no doubt about that, or whatever it was, right? And in this particular series, he is murdered by somebody. So what they do is that you actually find that a lot of the storyline is trying to find out who killed Jacob Marley. I mean, it's all inspired by the works, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely superb. I won't ruin it as to who actually does it, but it's highly recommended. But anyway, the point being is that was such a great series. It had great reviews, great response to it, and yet BBC never commissioned another series for it. And it was the same with a police drama they did once, actually, not long after the bill had been axed. You know, they jumped on the bandwagon, which, speaking of which, by the way, I believe the bill is coming back.
I think I've heard that. I haven't read much about it. I read something about that several months ago, but I haven't read anything since.
No, my understanding is that the bill is making a comeback, which would be bizarre. But actually, the other thing was this program was called Cuffs. And it was about a police drama, really, really good program. And then you made one series of it. It's bizarre how that happens. Anyway, I digress. What else have you got for us? Sorry.
Interesting. Okay, well, so I went to the movies again just before Christmas to see something called A Complete Unknown, which is a biopic about Robert Zimmerman, better known as Bob Dylan. And it takes the life of Bob Dylan from the age of 20 to about 26. So basically, it starts on the day he arrives with his guitar in New York as a young folk writer and singer. but hasn't really made a name for himself, but is coming to find fame and fortune, having left Minnesota. I think his dad used to run a furniture store in Minnesota, so he had a sort of, middle class background in Minnesota, but clearly wanted to become a musician. And he arrives, and you don't hear anything about his background. And in fact, that was one of the only frustrations, because I just thought, gosh, I actually don't know Bob Dylan's background. I would really like to have known more about where his parents came from and his grandparents, and they were Russian Jews and Lithuanian Jews, and they arrived in the early 1900s. And I would like to have known more about how they arrived and settled and all of that stuff. But you hear none of that at all. It starts on the day that he's 20 and follows him through the following 6 years, where he begins to electrify, for want of a better word, folk music. Folk music up until certainly 66 had been purely done on acoustic guitars. And the big controversy in the film, which the film leads up to all the way, is him wanting to go to the Newport Folk Festival and use an electric guitar. Now, I didn't know any of this at all, but actually it makes for a really nice storyline in a really good film, where Timothy Chalamet, who was, you may remember from Willy Wonka, and he's the hero in Dune, if you've watched the Dune movies.
I am aware of them. I haven't actually watched them.
Right.
But yeah, no, he's got quite actually a back catalogue of very impressive and successful films.
Yes, his big breakout film was something called Call Me By Your Name.
Yes,
which came out about 6 years ago, something like that. He's
incredibly
talented young
because I didn't know what the story was about, so I just heard people raving about it and did actually watch it. It wasn't in the least bit what I thought it would be. Also, fun enough, about a Jewish family, but based in Italy, I think, if my memory serves.
Yes, fun enough, I don't remember the religious profile of the family at all, but it was about two men.
No, they were because believe me, I noticed these things.
Okay. Well, that had passed me by. I mean, he in fact is, Timothy Chalamet is half French, half American, and is of Jewish extraction. So clearly has a beautiful face that very much matches the Dylan face, but he sings every single song himself. And often where people are miming in films like that, I really hate it, because I can see that the lip sync isn't working, and you can see that.
Something funny, I don't ever think lip sync ever can work.
No,
literally ever. Even from the earliest of days, if you think of sort of, for me, one of the first examples of lip sync I think we saw in like a mainstream film that is still prominent today would probably be something like The Sound of Music. Christopher Plummer never sang any of the songs. He lip synced with all of that. And I think it's flipping obvious he is. Yeah. It's awful. Yeah, you've got Julie Andrews, who's got the most sensational voice, and Christopher Plummer tries to keep up with just moving his mouth a little bit like a sort of a cod having a stroke. But
anyway, it's very good.
I digress, sorry.
No, not at all. Very briefly, there are the love interest are two women, one of whom is the first girl that he meets in New York and has a relationship with. And then he has a rather tumultuous relationship with the folk singer Joan Baez. And the girl who plays Joan Baez is absolutely astonishing. She's a really good actress, and actually she stole the screen completely when I watched the film. Again, that comes out this weekend. It comes out next weekend, but it's on every poster site in town, being pushed very heavily for nominations for Timothy Chalamet as lead. And
it's called, sorry, again, just remind us.
A terrible title. It's called A Complete Unknown, which is a title you will forget by the end of this program.
Well, you've proven that beautifully, because you did say that already and I had forgotten it, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Have we got any quick fire suggestions in the last 2 minutes?
Quick fires, let me think. Oh, if you want something really quirky but also incredibly good fun, you will have seen posters of a monkey everywhere who is supposed to be Robbie Williams. It's a biopic of Robbie Williams called A Better Man. And the Robbie Williams character, it's about his life as he grows up, gets into Take That, gets into cocaine, gets out of Take That, becomes a solo artist. but he is played by a monkey because he famously said he felt he was a performing monkey. So the role is played by a CGI chimpanzee. And you think this joke will not sustain for 2 hours. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to watch a film about a monkey for 2 hours. And it's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Wow. Okay.
So
mind you, everyone said that about Dunstan Checks In, and that was one of the big children's films from the early 90s. So anything's possible, really.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, that was superb, that film. Part of my childhood. Any old way. Chantal, thank you very much indeed. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Great to see you.
See you next week.
Hopefully see you very soon. Chantal Rickards, OBE there with what's on the box and everything to enjoy and get up to this weekend. If you got a bit of a spare moment, which I actually now do, which is very exciting because going back to Monday to Friday means I get my weekends back, which is jolly exciting. Anyway, that's about it for today. Thank you very much indeed for your company and your comments and everything else. And if you just stuck with us, really, you didn't even have to comment. Just you just watched along. It was great to have you. You'll be delighted to hear that Russ will be back on Monday. He'll be back with Neil Long, on Monday at midday. So I hope that you'll join them both then. I am off to go and crack on with the day job now because technically speaking, it's what pays the electricity bills. And boy, oh boy, did I have a bad electricity bill this last month. I blame Christmas decorations. I'll see you very soon. Thanks. Bye.